Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Welcome. My name is Mike Burns, and I'm on the board of Florida Veterans for Common Sense. All right, now I turn it over to Manny Lopez for our program. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, welcome to the CFO Forum. CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer. And I'd like to thank the three candidates that are participating: Frank Collige, Earle Ford, and Annette Taddeo. Each candidate will have 3 minutes of an intro to hit their about themselves and a high point. After all three candidates speak, and we'll have a question and answer period. And each candidate will have the opportunity to answer each question. And we will rotate who goes first through the order to answer the questions in second and third, along that way. The CFO duties and roles are pretty significant. Their duties and roles are overseeing accounting, auditing, and reports from state agencies. They have insurance oversight for fraud and consumer protection. And insurance is big in Florida. Manage unclaimed properties. They are the state treasurer, the state fire marshal, and are a member of the cabinet, the Florida cabinet. So a lot of responsibilities here. So now let me go with the candidates here. Frank Collige. And a little bit about Frank. He has decades of experience in leadership, business development, financial oversight, and public service. Served in the U.S. Air Force. Is owner of Property Pros Consulting, which operates in 8 states, addressing insurance fraud committed by carriers, contractors, and works to protect clients from unfair claim denials, inflated repair costs, and misleading policy practices. He has worked to ensure fairness and accountability in the insurance industry, seeing firsthand how unethical practices drive up costs for hardworking Floridians. And he has worked to protect clients from unfair claim denials, inflated repair costs, and misleading policy practices.
All right, thank you for having me. I grew up in Zephyr Hills, Florida, and as he stated, I did serve in the U.S. Air Force. I am a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. Unlike my opponent, who refuses to actually attend any of these, I believe in the rule of law. I believe in our Constitution. I fight insurance companies for a living, so there's no one who is running for this office knows insurance as much as I do. My firm handles over 1,000 claims annually. We represent that many people each year against insurance companies. I believe the office needs to be more proactive and making everything more transparent. My whole platform is about integrity, accountability, and transparency. Married my lovely wife, Suzette. She's right in the back. I met her overseas. We've been married for 20 years. I brought her here legally. We have 2 teenage daughters, which is why I'm bald and gray. And yep, some of y'all understand. And I know we can work on insurance because, one of the things that we can do is sit down and negotiate with insurance companies. I know we can do this because one is, again, we work over 1,000 claims annually. That's what we do. We negotiate. And 2 is if you guys ever try to negotiate with 2 teenage girls, I think we can handle insurance. So I look forward to the question and answers, and I look forward for you guys to get to know who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Now, Frank is running as a Republican in a primary against Blaise Ingoglia, who is the present CFO, who cannot make it today. The other 2 candidates are also in a primary against each other as Democrats. Annette Taddeo, I should let you guys know that she may have to leave a little early. We had that bad earthquake in Colombia, and she is Colombian, and she's working up there right now with some Colombian efforts for relief and other things there. So Annette, if you first let me read a little bit about Annette. Annette was the first Latina Democrat elected to the Florida State Senate in 2017 and has kept winning the Senate seat. Her family fled Colombia to the U.S. with values instilled in her: resilience, a commitment to public service, belief that hard work still meant something in America. She built Language Speak from the ground up into one of America's top 500 Hispanic American small businesses. In Tallahassee, she's earned respect across party lines by doing one thing consistently, standing up for Florida families, no matter who is in their way. So let's go to Earle Ford. Born in the U.S., on a U.S. Air Force base, Earle grew up with the values of hard work, honesty, and pride in country. His lifetime of service has taken him from military service to public service, fight for accountability at every level of government. Earle began his career as a U.S. Army airborne paratrooper in the infantry, was a state prosecutor. Later, Earle served as a federal IRS lawyer, where he scrutinized complex financial schemes, investigated the ultra-wealthy, and exposed tax loopholes that allowed powerful interests to avoid paying their fair share. His mission has been fighting for the people, not the powerful. Earle, 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you guys. It's an absolute honor to be here. That being said, I'm here the same reason you're here. I love my country. I care deeply about my community, and I want to fight to get Florida back on track. That being said, I'm very proud of my service. First started the United States Army Infantry, and those military values, I'm going to say, and it's something that we all know: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. These are values which I've carried with me throughout my career. But not only that, the Army gave me a unique opportunity to do something that no one in my family had ever done, and that was go to law school. And when I went to law school, I realized I wanted a lifetime of public service, and I wanted to commit to my community. And what that first looked like was when I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of Regional Counsel in Orlando. After getting through law school and passing the bar, I then went to work for the State Attorney's Office in Orlando. And that was the first time in my life that I ever held people accountable. And I realized I wanted to commit to my community, and I sensed the intrinsic value and the pride of that commitment. I then went to work for everyone's favorite three-letter agency, the IRS. But that being said, the IRS did give me a unique skill set. I had oversight of complex trust and gifting transactions. You hear about, hey, we go to war against the 1%. We didn't do the 1%ers. We did the 0.1%ers. I'm talking about people with minimum net worth of $30 million, where I routinely handle cases in excess of $500 million. Your Fortune 500 CEOs, billionaire sport team owners, people who are used to not being told no. And we stood on the other side of the table and held them accountable. What that looks like for you and what I want to bring to the CFO's office is first and foremost enforcement of the law. There's been bipartisan legislation like SB 7052, which has enhanced the CFO's ability to go after the insurance companies. And quite frankly, this has not taken place. It's also about accountability. Under the current CFO, we've seen wasteful spending, whether you want to talk about Alligator Alcatraz, the migrant flight scandal, the school voucher scandal, and Hope scandal. These are all issues in which the CFO could have intervened. It's also about consumer advocacy, standing on the side of the average Floridian against these insurance companies, against financial companies, and making sure people could have an advocate on their side. But it's also about building trust in our government again, and you do that through radical transparency and giving Floridians unprecedented access into how their government spends money. But at the end of the day, it's not about what we do, it's how we do it. And I want to bring back leadership with real values. And what that means is bringing back leadership that shows decency, empathy, compassion, and respect. And that's what I want to bring to Tallahassee. So thank you.
Yes, I thank you. And obviously technology is our friend and our enemy at the same time. I am Senator Annette Taddeo, and really honored to be with you here. And I actually, today's a difficult day for me because I am originally from Colombia, South America, and if you haven't seen the news, there was a horrible, horrible earthquake. So I've been dealing all day with uniting the community and organizing all of the help that is needed, including our rescue from Fire Rescue to Go, which just came back from Venezuela, where they saved numerous lives, including not just the fire and rescue folks from Miami-Dade, but from other areas across the country. So been dealing with all that. I don't want to take my 3 minutes for that, but I just want you to know why I actually have to leave and not stay for the whole time. I am the daughter of an American fighter pilot who was sent to Colombia, and that's how he met my mom, and the rest is history. but we came to the United States after my father was kidnapped by the FARC, a terrorist group. So we understand more than most people all of the things that are going on in our country when it comes to the fact that so many people across the world are dealing with terrorism. I want you to know that I settled in Florida, built a family in Florida, built a business over 30 years, a successful business. And then I got elected to the Florida Senate where I got elected, where I flipped a seat and then got reelected. I got elected in a special election and then got reelected. I served 5 years on the Banking and Insurance Committee, where I was a constant fighter against the insurance companies. I do believe that those are some of our major problems. And one of the reasons I'm in this race is because we need an actual guard dog of our resources and of the people of Florida. We do not need a lapdog. And I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican. We need to make sure that the person in this position is a watchdog for the people. To that end, I have 3 things that I want to highlight, and that is affordability, accountability, and anti-corruption. Affordability, we already know we pay the highest insurance in the country, and I could go on about insurance. I actually think that the bills that have been passed have been horrendous to the people of Florida, because after you pay for 30 years of insurance, your roof caves in and a hurricane hits, and the insurance companies now have all of the driver's seat, and you have none of the ways for you to get help. We need a CFO that's actually going to help people when they need it most. In addition to that, accountability. Right now, the job is not being done. Our current CFO is not even putting many of the contracts on the fax database, a required database by the CFO to run over 600 million. No, they don't even put them on there. And that's in statute, that's state law.
Excuse me, time's up there. Appreciate it. Now we're going to have questions and answers from the audience and let you ask your question. And then each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the question.
Okay, so I was hearing a pretty good riff there about the issue of affordability, accountability, and fighting corruption. I would like to hear what the candidates have to say, starting with that third point, fighting corruption. How are we going to fight that in this state?
All right, that's a good question. So basically, right now, the CFO is responsible for the budget, right? And every jurisdiction that reports to the CFO's office has to report their budget annually to the CFO. Well, my answer is real simple. We're going to make every jurisdiction report line by line, and we're going to make it public. And because we want the citizens to audit their elected officials. And then, so what happens with corruption is usually behind closed doors. It's usually shady and all that. So we're going to shine a light on all of that because follow the money, right? And so once there's enough flags that from the public flagging an issue, then the CFO's office will come down and actually conduct a full audit of that. And if there's any wrongful doings, anything that falls under the jurisdiction of the CFO's office that he can actually enforce, we will put people in handcuffs because I don't like that. I spent 10 years as a military cop. I put people in handcuffs, and we will continue doing that.
As Frank kind of mentioned, auditing, right? You have to dive into the financials to see where the money's going. I know it's not a sexy word, and everyone gets bored. But the reality, we need boring, competent government. And what that means is using the full leverage of the Department of Financial Services to not only look at the Office of Insurance. So fully leveraging the Department of Financial Services to investigate the Office of Insurance Regulation, Office of Financial Regulation, to make sure we see where the money's going. When you are transparent, you open it at the sunshine, the people of Florida see where the money's going, but you also give unprecedented access into how we conduct these contracts, who we give these state contracts to, but also whether or not there's connections to the donor class. We know right now there's been a lot of non-bid contracts given out to donors of this administration, and that's what a lot of those backroom deals. So again, this is almost a nonpartisan office in the sense that you're maximizing transparency, giving people that insight, but also leveraging the law enforcement capabilities that the CFO does have to crack down on it.
Yes, the CFO actually has the ability to investigate and has a department for this. In addition to this, the CFO is required by law and statute to audit no bid contracts, especially in particular, those for emergency funding. And we have seen over $1.2 billion spent in emergency funding just on Alligator Alcatraz. No matter how you feel about what happened there, the fact is those audits are not being done. And then you go and look, and by the way, I don't have a department, but I went looking. And sure enough, the largest contributor to Blaise Ingoglia, the unelected appointed CFO, is the largest bidder or beneficiary of the contracts. $100,000 check written to his political committee, and yet no audits of any of these expenses. You've heard of the porta potties and the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that we have spent on the porta potties, and lo and behold, you go and look, and there's $1 million to all kinds of elected officials and to the party. So those things that is corruption. And we have to go after it. And you have the opportunity to do this as CFO. I plan on doing it. And I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican, because that is the cancer. When we have all this corruption and all this pay to play, that is the cancer that we have amongst us. And all of us are suffering financially, but we need to make sure that the corruption going right underneath the nose of our current CFO, unelected,
Okay.
that is what we should go after always.
Okay, thank you. Next question out here. We got one online. Where did DeSantis get the money to fund the concentration camp in the Everglades?
Yeah, so there's a general fund which the legislature does give the governor the ability to spend on certain things that fall within the statute. This is a constant issue that we've seen under this administration with DeSantis using it as he sees fit, whether he wants to go on political flights to China or fund his own campaign agenda. This falls outside the scope of what is allowed for. So this is where the CFO would actually step in. So the big thing with the CFO is intervening is ensuring when money is allocated by the legislature, it falls within the statute and it falls within what it's defined, where it's supposed to go. Anytime it's outside those bounds is where the CFO can use the power of the office to get involved. So while there is a general fund that gives the governor the ability to spend money, it needs to be allocated in very specific ways. And under the current CFO has not enforced that law at all. So I think, and you hear from, I think, all three of us in the sense that it's about enforcing the law. The big thing is the CFO is the independent watchdog of the governor. So although you're in the cabinet, you're not appointed by him, you're a check against the governor. So it's to ensure that money that the legislature set gets to where it's supposed to go and not just, spent all willy-nilly.
Thank you, Earl. Annette, would you like to address that question a little bit in some way?
Yes, absolutely. And indeed, I think I've already spoken about it, but this came from the emergency fund. And the kind of money that we are supposed to have for should a hurricane hit us or the fires. And we, unfortunately, have been using this money, the governor has been using this money for political things and grandstanding and doing things that, in my opinion, are tremendously wrong. But furthermore, they're lining the pockets of their donors. And what we found as well is that this, I have to tell you, when you're spending $1 million a day to house these people in tents in the Everglades, it would have been cheaper to go to a Holiday Inn and pay the daily rate. So my point is, this is completely unacceptable and it's wrong. And where did the money come from? It came from emergency funding. Now, the new emergency funding that now is given to the governor, they did create some parameters to not allow him to just spend on whatever he wants, including these flights and all these things that he was using it for. So again, so that he could run for president and claim to be, tough on immigrants. But the point is, it was our money and money that's supposed to be for our emergencies.
Okay, thank you, Annette.
All right, so the emergency fund is supposed to be in case of emergency, right? As Annette said, is hurricanes hit Florida, we got wildfires, et cetera. These are supposed to be under a state of emergency. Problem is they use it willy-nilly. They just use it. However, there was supposed to be a audit conducted. It's never been conducted because why would you conduct an audit against your donors? So there's an issue here, and that was the answer. For whoever asked, it came from the emergency fund.
Thank you. Okay, another question here. Have taxpayers authorized DeSantis flights to bring people from Israel to Florida? That would be Annette. You're the next one on call.
No, taxpayers have never authorized any of this stuff that he keeps doing. That I think is more political, but there are. If there are emergencies, there is some leeway that is given to the governor. So if there are emergencies that people need to be taken out of a war zone, let's say, for example, there is some leeway there. However, again, for him, almost everything has been unfortunately political and not really in the best interest. Voters did not vote for any of this.
Thank you. Frank?
No, the voters did not vote for it. And matter of fact, if we're going to be intervening with what's happening overseas, that should be federal, not state. And so that is beyond the scope of the governor's job. And he overstepped. And I don't know why anyone did not step in, but that's where we're at.
Thank you. Earle?
Yeah, I think this is one of the issues where you start trying to drive into what's actually statute and what's allowable. I don't know off the top of my head what the statute is that allows this, although I do know generally in general legalese, there's always some sort of emergency exception, especially when you're talking about your own citizens. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some exception within this. However, that being said, this is on a larger scale a federal issue. And then, so the federal government needs to take the first step in making sure that money's there rather than us, again, spending Florida taxpayer money for political purposes.
Thank you, Earle. Okay, other questions there?
So if I were to use one word to describe our president and our governor, it would be bully. You look at the two candidates that are leading for governorship now, one who I think is very popular with everyone in this room looks to be quite a gentleman. The other one, I've got question marks in terms of his workability, in terms of entertaining your opinion, respecting you, and not trying to fire you. What is your approach should you have to work with a governor who tries to bully you the way DeSantis bullied his administration?
It's real simple. I don't work for the governor, right? There's Florida is broken down into 4 equal executives. It's not run by one single executive like the governor. Okay, it's made up of the cabinet, the governor, the attorney general, the chief financial officer, and commissioner of agriculture. Neither one of us work for each other. So you can try to bully me all you want. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I promise you, nothing you throw at me is going to be that terrible. And most importantly is I don't care if it's the governor himself. If you violate any statute that I'm entrusted to enforce, you're going to go to jail. So he can try to bully me all he wants, but if he has financial crimes that I'm in charge of, I'm putting handcuffs on him. I don't care who it is.
Earle?
Yeah, so I think this is, given the current political climate, this is why you see a lot of veterans kind of stepping up. I mean, I know we're probably on different spectrums of like the political, like what our political beliefs are, but I think at the end of the day, the reason a lot of us here, you swore an oath, right? And that you'll die by that oath, even though I'm no longer in uniform. So that's what it's ultimately about. The oaths we swear to, but also the people we represent. Right now, I was raised in the sense that bullies do so from a position of weakness. And when you, from a position of strength, you offer empathy, compassion, and respect. And that's what's missing in government. So ultimately what this comes back to is I'm here today because I have a 4-year-old, 2-year-old. I want to fight for their future. I want to fight for your future. And that means standing on the right side of history. I'm proud of my career in public service, whether it's, working as a prosecutor, but also again at the IRS when I stood opposite very, very powerful interests. So I'm used to that position. and it's something I'm comfortable with. There's a reason you get in public service. There's a reason you want to be here is because it's about doing the right thing. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about those basic values we get into. Is about doing the right thing, and that's what drives me, and that's what I will continue to do if I'm elected.
All right, thank you, Earle. Annette?
Well, I, again, have been elected twice to represent the people of my district in particular in this case, but I always thought that you don't just represent the people of your district, you represent all the people of Florida, and you have to do what's right for the people of Florida, and that's what I always did. And I've dealt with bullies my entire life, and I can tell you, not afraid, and that is why I'm considered a fighter, someone that doesn't give up, fighting for the people and for what's right. I learned, I got my fighting spirit from my dad, and I know that no matter who ends up being the governor, that I'm going to be able to be there like I always was, to represent the people. Many times I actually was very much, I would say, I don't know about bullied, but certainly talked to and threatened, even by my own party at times. And if it wasn't the right thing to do, I wasn't going to do it. It really needed to be what was best for Floridians. And that's what I always have done. And by the way, that's the reason why I have so much respect across the aisle as well. And I think we all are tired of this nastiness, and we need to work together for the good of the people, because unfortunately, when you have one party rule for 30 years, you don't have any checks and balances, and we need that.
Thank you, Annette.
So I've seen all the advertisements from the Republican candidates for various seats in the government coming across. And at the end, they all consider themselves conservative. So my question to you is, do you consider yourself a conservative? And if you do, what are the principles of your conservatism?
All right, thank you. Yes, I do consider myself a conservative. I believe in the Constitution. I believe no right should be trampled on. Matter of fact, my opponent, he voted to strip you of your constitutional right to court through House Bill 799, and I think that's completely wrong. My personal thing is about, you got life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and no one should infringe on that. So yes, I am a conservative. I believe in, like I said, everyone has their rights, and I would never infringe on people's rights. So I don't know how much conservative you could possibly get, other than, the Constitution is the supreme law, and we need to follow that.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Insurance is a major problem in Florida, and one of the main responsibilities of CFO is to deal with insurance. How would you make insurance industry more responsive to the people and benefit the people more than it's being done now?
So I think you start at the big picture. So you serve on the Financial Services Commission. So the first thing would be appointing Office of Insurance Regulation Commissioner who wants to be more transparent. We know the current one in 2022. There was a report that was done that kind of highlighted how the insurance companies conducted their rates, and the current commissioner did everything in his power to hide that. And then when State Bill 7052 came into, when they were drafting it, they wanted that to come out, but again, the donors shut that down. So the first thing is working to ensure that you have a good commissioner. The other way you do that is enforcement of the law. If you don't have a commissioner willing to be more transparent in the rates, what you do is enforce it. So that means working with every Florida policyholder. If they have a claim, that means literally holding their hand, being the gatekeeper, providing a dashboard for them to handle their claims. This will give the state the ability to have insight how the claim will be handled. Again, this is where we start aggregating data, and we get data points in how these insurance companies are making their money. Whether or not there's pain points in, whether it's third parties, the adjusters, whether it's building materials or labor, it gives us more insight. It's also cracking down, well, not cracking down, but one of the other issues that we're suffering from is they like to talk about the tort reform. They made it much harder for people to sue insurance companies, and they say that's going to lower the prices. But the reality is they've actually made it near impossible for people to ever be made whole again. And insurance companies are benefiting from the the fact not only are people not suing, but the mediation process is bottlenecked and it's preventing people from settling the claims, and it's allowing the insurance to hold on the money longer. So this, from the get-go, when the state's involved and it can literally hold the policyholder's hand, and we can intervene whenever there's any sort of issue, whether it's nominal or significant, I think that gives us a lot more insight into addressing the rates.
Thank you, Earl. Annette, insurance question to you.
Yes. Much of the same that Earl has said, except I would also add that I want to institute a report card to really let everyone know, and to have the insurance companies rated and told, how many complaints there are, since the CFO's office actually handles the consumer advocate division. We need the public to know which ones are taking forever to really respond to your claim and to resolve it. Which ones slow walk you to the point that many people give up. Others do hire a lawyer, but now they have made that even impossible, as was also spoken about before. So that to me is really important. I happen to know that in business, when you start telling people how companies are doing, they're going to try to make sure that that information is not so public, or that it's good, that their ratings are good. And in addition to that, they are sending the money to other states through their other companies and hiding how many millions of dollars they're making. So that is instrumental. And Earl is right. They tried to hide that. I was actually there when we found this study that was done, and that how they tried to bury it and would never show it to us. And of course, people like me in the committee were always asking for this, and we finally got it out in the open. But it was only because of public records requests and media and others going after that we actually found out all the other stuff. In addition to that, one last thing is we definitely, when it comes to citizens, we haven't talked about that. Citizens policies, we try to reduce it, and so therefore give it to these companies. Well, that's a whole other area where all of these policies are being given to their donors and their friends, who all of a sudden open up an insurance company, and they get 600,000 policies from citizens, and the president and his wife, the COO of the company, between the two of them, $38 million in 1 year. That kind of stuff is what I'm talking about, corruption, and the kind of stuff that I'm going to go after and not allow it, because that is not okay. That doesn't lower your insurance, and we need to make sure that people are paying a fair amount for their insurance. It's the most expensive item when it comes to homeowners, and if you are a renter, you're still paying for it.
Thank you, Annette.
All right, so she's referring to slide insurance, which is actually $50 million a year. And after 6 months of collecting premiums only from Citizens Insurance, they went public and made $120 million. But yeah, so one of the things we can do is, well, first of all, we all heard litigation was the reason for rate increases, right? Well, in 2022, they got rid of litigation. The one-way attorney fees, did your rates go down? No. They keep going up, right? Well, how many of you guys have read your policy? Typically, you have a $10,000 water cap. So if you have a $10,000 water cap, are you going to hire an attorney who's going to spend $6,000 to prove $10,000? No. It had everything to do with corporate greed. And that's the reason why they pushed all this. They push, and it's all about corporate greed. The way we're going to tackle that is they have to get approval from Office of Insurance Regulation to raise rates. My answer is real simple. Justify it. Sit with a forensic audit. If you don't want to sit with a forensic audit, we just don't let you raise your rates. If you can justify a need for a rate increase, then have at it. But you need to justify a rate increase. Real simple. Because the time for the insurance companies making billions of dollars off of our backs should be over. Because they do. They move money from one entity to another and say, we're losing money. Then they get approved. Then they move money back and say, we're losing money. Then they get approved. If Florida was such a loser, then why is the same conglomerate opening up multiple entities in Florida? Because Viceroy Insurance is a new carrier to Florida. Well, guess what? It's owned by the same conglomerate that owns Monarch Insurance. So where Florida is a moneymaker, it's just corporate greed driving the bus. That's it.
Thank you, Frank. Next question, and Annette will start it off. Why have we allowed homeowners insurance policies to be moved from citizens to companies that may be fly by night?
100%. And that's, unfortunately, part of the reasoning is that we shouldn't have, we should, get rid of a lot of these policies that we have at Citizens. And the idea is obviously we as insurance citizens, which is government insurance, should be the insurance of last resort. So, but what they have figured out is a way to give it to their friends, and the people who are their donors, and they're making millions and millions of dollars and robbing us blind. So, again, this is why they're not going to they want someone who represents, who's there to fight for the insurance companies, not somebody who's there to fight for the people. And I really believe this is an issue, whether it's Citizens or the private insurance market, all of it. I don't care what side of the aisle you are, or if you're an MPA, red or blue, it doesn't matter. We are all affected by it, and we know it, and Floridians know it, and it's enough of the bull. We have got to call it out, and the reason why they claim they need to take away all the Citizens policies is because we can't take on that much liability. We need to make sure that we have other companies take it, but somehow these companies, again, I know that for the most part, it's supposed to not go up significantly. Well, that's bull. And I personally stood up on the floor and told them when they were voting for a rate increase for Citizens for eternity, and really not enough parameters in place. And yet they still voted that way. All these bills, I was against every one of them that made it more difficult. And having the opportunity to be there as your CFO, for me, it would be a way to go around the laws that they have passed. Not everything can be done, but there is sure a lot that can be done, including making sure that these policies, as they go to private companies, that they actually go to companies that there is a bidding process, that we're completely transparent so that people are able to see where it's going, and that they're companies that are not fly by night, as was said before.
Okay, thank you there. Annette, Frank, you're addressing it?
All right, so insurance companies, if they're within 20% of Citizens premium, you get depopulated into that program. Well, the problem is we got too many crappy insurance companies coming to Florida, or some that were here. For instance, how many of y'all know Patriot Insurance? Anyone? Well, it's a new carrier to Florida. 5 years ago, they were Anchor Insurance. What happened 5 years ago? Back-to-back storms, right? Ever remember that? Well, Anchor Insurance told the state of Florida, we're not going to pay our claims, so they left Florida. They did a runoff and left Florida, waited 5-year cooling off period, changed only their name. Only their name, came to Florida, got gifted thousands of policies from Citizens Insurance. Several issues. One, OIR should have never gave them their license. Should have said, at a minimum, pay back Florida for the claims that you've abandoned first. But they didn't do that. Secondly, Citizens Insurance shouldn't even be an insurance company. It should be a reinsurance company. For those who don't know what reinsurance is, it's insurance for insurance companies. It should have never been an insurance carrier. It should have been reinsurance for hurricane claims. If we do that, and we have the CAT fund that offsets some of the costs of that Citizens dishes out for hurricane claims, we can actually bring in more carriers to Florida, which will drive down prices. More legitimate carriers, not carriers that are just new entities of the same name.
Yeah, so I think this is just a classic situation of regulatory capture. That's where the industry is in charge of regulating itself, and that's where we're at. I think at the end of the day, we're in a situation where insurance companies can cherry pick the policies they want. And what you have is, over the course of the last few years, you had a lot of respected insurance companies leave the state, and you have these new companies show up over the course of a night. They cherry pick their policies, and and the CEOs make what we talked about, slide insurance, like him and his wife. Yeah, he said $50 million. These people are making astronomically more than the CEO of major insurance companies like Allstate and Progressive, because they come in, they cherry pick their policy, they cherry pick who they're gonna milk, and then at the end of the day, they don't pay out those claims, and then they just walk out. The reality is, we need to make sure we have a healthy regulatory environment. The CFO's role is not to go to war against the insurance company. It's to encourage, we make sure we enforce the law on the insurance companies, but also on contractors and even homeowners, making sure we're applying the law equally and hold everyone accountable. When that happens, we have a healthy environment. Bigger companies are going to want to come in because they know they can compete on a level playing field, and that's what the CFO needs to do. And once you have healthy competition, more insurance companies are going to come into the state, and that should also help drive prices. But right now, the industry owns the regulators, so that's what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you, Earl. How do you feel about the direction the Republican Party has gone towards supporting oligarchs and eliminating programs for the people?
It's a good question because I'm against oligarchs. There should be good programs for the people. Now, I don't believe that the government should be supporting your entire way of life. I believe everyone should work for a living. I believe everyone is entitled to work for a living. And if you can't work for a living because of any kind of physical or mental illness, then we can work with that. But I would need to have expounded on what programs are we getting rid of before I can go further in depth on those programs, because depending on what the program is. I mean, if you're talking about SNAP benefits, well, I remember the day when you had the actual physical, the food stamps, and you can only buy certain things. Now you can buy hot food over the counter. That makes no sense to me. I'm a firm believer that, if it's SNAP benefit, go back to the good old days of bread, cheese, and milk. There you go. But seriously, depending on what the program is, I just need to know what the program we're talking about is. That was a very open-ended question, but I'm against oligarchs. That's, real simple.
Yeah, I mean, that was my world at the IRS, right? Like I worked in one of two programs in government that focused exclusively on the richest people in the world. And again, that's not hyperbole. My unit was 180 attorneys, and that was our bread and butter. So I've seen the difference between us and them. I've seen, the chateaus in France. I've seen the private car collections, and then on my way home, you see the veterans under the bridge. At the end of the day, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we need to act like that. And that means taking care of our most vulnerable people. It also means it means paying it forward. And if this country has blessed you with the unique opportunity to, bask in that wealth, I think you need to pay it forward to make sure future generations have that same opportunity. But also, it comes back to those values of empathy and compassion. People have hard days, and stuff happens to good people. And just because that happens doesn't mean you should be out on the street. And we need to, again, extend a hand, and we need to start treating people as a community and friends. We're in this together. Again, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we need to start acting like it.
Thank you, Earl. Annette, your comments on this?
Well, I also do not like oligarchs. I will say that something comes to mind. The government has a role to be there when we need it most. I mean, look, I don't know about you guys, but I think just about every Floridian has experienced a hurricane, and we need to make sure that we're there for people when they need us most in case of emergency, a fire, and certainly in situations where people sometimes end up in. And we are seeing a lot of people ending up in very tough situations right now, to no fault of their own in many cases. It's not just for people who are disabled or not able. I remember I went through the COVID. I was the sitting senator during COVID, and we had a collapse of the unemployment insurance. That is something that actually it comes out of your paycheck. Like, you pay for this, your employer pays for this, and it collapsed, and it wasn't there for people when they needed it most. And I know my office was so overwhelmed. Many of the senators actually took off, got in an RV, and went across the country with their family because everything was closed. I didn't. I actually was on the radio every single day answering questions, answering phones, to the point that I went to the Senate president and I said, hey, I need more staff to help me answer the phones. We're getting phone calls from people all over the state of Florida, not just Miami, Florida. And it's because people really needed that help. And I will tell you, I never, ever gave up until people got the check that they deserved. So we do have programs within our government, and I'm talking about state government now, that are there for a reason. They are supposed to be there for when people need it, and we need to make sure that it works and that it's there as people expected. So there can be excesses and there can be wrongdoing, and we will go after that. But the fact of the matter, most people do not take advantage, do not use it, but when it's absolutely needed. And that's what I've done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Thank you.
Short question. We're all talking about greed, corporate greed from insurance companies. Let's follow the money. Where is insurance company lobbyists and donations going to in this race and in the governor's race, and any specifics that we have, including Donalds and Simpson, who else is running for governor?
I mean, I don't know specifics. I know Ingoglia, campaign has been primarily funded. We know DeSantis previously had one of the largest war chests in Florida history, and that was also funded by the insurance industry. I don't have the specific numbers per se, but we do know. I mean, you might, but the industry's dominant. I mean, the fact that they've been able to be so profitable, and other industries are concerned about the dominance of the insurance industry. Like Frank said, Florida is a very lucrative market because they could dictate who they pick and what they pick. There's no rules, so that's a reason why these upstarts can start overnight. And so it behooves them to keep the same environment where, two guys could make an insurance company and walk away with $20 million. So as long as they keep pumping that scheme, there's no reason to stop it. So, and I'm sure Annette and Frank you get other industries reaching out to you because they're concerned just because the regulatory environment is such a disaster. But yeah, but to answer your question, I don't have specifics. I just do know it's a large number.
Thank you, Earle. Annette, you're on.
I can answer that question. It is not my campaign. And I doubt very much is any of our campaigns of those of us who are here. The insurance industry is definitely behind the unelected incumbent Blaise Ingoglia. And you can find that out at the State Department. All the reports are there, and you're actually able to see that a large percentage of his funding is from insurance companies. But it's not just insurance companies. It's also, I mentioned, one of the largest beneficiaries of Alligator Alcatraz was, I didn't mention the name, but I'll give it to you, is CDR Enterprises. And CDR Enterprises wrote the largest check to his political committee, which was $100,000 check. And lo and behold, he's not doing the required by law audit of all those no bid contracts for emergency funding. And I could go on. There are many more, and it is very unfortunate the amount of money. I will say that Florida does have one good law. We have many, but this one in particular, I think most people don't know about. And that is that for cabinet level positions, we do have public financing for cabinet level positions. Something that, certainly I, as a Democrat, I'm very much for. And people may say, oh, but you're using taxpayer dollars. And here's what I say. No, we need to make sure that we level the playing field and that we are able to get some of this public financing, because let me tell you, the big corporations and those that want to make sure that everything continues as it has, where they are running the show, like the insurance companies, they're not going to want to see somebody like me. And so we do have that matching up to $250 donation that we do get from the state of Florida for cabinet level positions. And I think that's wonderful. And by the way, so does DeSantis. He took $13 million for both his races, from taxpayer dollars. So if Blaise even thinks about attacking any of us, and certainly me, about any of this, well, he should ask his top dog, the one that he answers to, since he's a lapdog for the governor, and that is DeSantis.
Thank you. Frank, you're on.
All right. So Byron does receive a lot of money from insurance companies, and so does Blaise Ingoglia, which both of them already mentioned. And the problem is not so much the governor receiving money from an insurance company, it's the CFO receiving money from an insurance company, because he regulates an insurance company. So at what point does it become a donation versus a bribe? The CFO has not enforced any statute in the last 5-8 years. That includes our current one. Real quick, there's a Florida statute that says the insurance policy must be no lower than a 45 on a flesh report. But when we run it through the system, it's lower than 45. Where's the CFO in enforcing this? Allstate and State Farm are being sued by Oklahoma right now for RICO violations, and California is suing State Farm for RICO violations. Where's our investigation, if anything, just to clear them? So the reasoning behind the CFO receiving all that money, my question is it a contribution or is it a bribe?
One last question here.
I'd like to ask the candidates about their position on the proposed amendment on the state ballot in November to drastically reduce revenues from property taxes.
Annette, you're on this one to start with.
Sure. I will be voting no, and I do believe that Florida needs to look at how we can reduce people's taxes, and I do think that we should increase the homestead. However, this fly-by-night, I think they had it 24 hours before they voted on it, a total of 48 hours. No study, there was $1 million in the budget to do that, and the governor vetoed it. We know that at the end of the day, it is going to, in many cases, create a major problem when it comes to funding for police and fire. And I was just talking about the sending our firefighters, our special search and rescue team to Colombia and working with the State Department in particular and all these things. And they just were in Venezuela. I mean, the reason we have all of this is because we actually have departments that prepare for horrible situations, and they're not going to be able to do that. Or your taxes may be even higher because there's going to be fees. And by the way, with a homestead, there's a limit, right? And how much it can go up, but not with fees. And so the garbage fee and the other fees you're going to see. And if we do go the sales tax route, that's even more costly to people that already can't afford to live here. So I do believe that we need to look at our taxing system. This is not the answer. And a 24-hour turnaround of something that was never studied, never looked at is short-sighted. And I will highlight that police and fire are against it.
Thank you. Frank, your comments, and then Earle.
I wrote a whole thing about this. Visit my website. I have it all broken down, but it's real simple. They're only taking away the ad valorem portion of it. You're still paying the school tax, right? So that's only going to lower it a few $100, maybe $1,000 if you're lucky. Now, here's the problem: is Section 9 of that allows the local governments to impose taxes to offset the losses. So all you're doing is doing a shift. Right now, it's on your homestead, right? So what happens if they do the shift? What's going to happen is non-homesteaded properties, they're going to get taxed more, okay? That means renters who are living paycheck to paycheck, their rent's going to go up. Now, you got companies, their property tax has gone up. And that means they're going to have to offset that by raising prices of goods. So now goods are going to go up. So the person who's living paycheck to paycheck that's renting, now they're getting hurt because their rent gone up, their prices of goods have gone up, and they add a sales tax on top of that. That's even more. So the only people that this hurts are the poor and lower middle class. The rich and upper middle class are going to benefit from this, but this is not the best bill put forward by any means. The easiest way of the way they should have done this is just freeze your property taxes at the rate that you bought the house, because you already had that plan for the 50, 60 years later. Freeze it at that rate and then only adjust it whenever that property changes hands. I don't understand why we went this way, other than DeSantis wanted to go out on a bang and say, I tried, and that's the only thing I can make sense of. But me personally, I don't like this particular bill, and I'm looking at this as someone who has a doctorate in business and I deal with numbers. This is not the bill for us.
Thank you. Earl?
Yeah, I think it's a disaster. And I think the biggest thing, so we've been talking about insurance all night, and it always comes back to insurance. Right now, Florida has the worst insurance rates in the country, right? Florida's one of the few states in which the insurance exceeds the property taxes. You get rid of the property taxes, you're going to get rid of, well, fire and police departments will shrink or may cease altogether. If your fire department closes, guess what happens to your insurance? It spikes, because the insurance companies have to accommodate for the risk. So that's going to be offset. That's going to offset the insurance. So whatever minimal gain you might get from property taxes, insurance will spike. The other thing is, what this also does, it takes away local control and unifies all your power in Tallahassee. The home rule is one of these things that make Florida unique, right? Local governments know what's best. If hey, we need to build a bridge, hey, we need to fund stormwater, we need more local transportations. Local government knows best, and it's easier to hold them accountable. When you get rid of local government's ability to do whatever they need to do, people are going to have to go beg for money in Tallahassee. Sales tax is going to go up, and the state coffers will have increased revenue. And so it makes it ripe for corruption, because the big cities with money will send their people to Tallahassee, and they'll get funded with whatever backroom deal. So it not only takes away local power, it unifies that power in Tallahassee, and it still doesn't address the insurance crisis which we're under.
Thank you, Earl. And again, thanks to all three candidates for being here and participating. And the meeting is adjourned.